My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it. Do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and beer.
Years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Say community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here of Let's Talk Dispatch with me, the Raspy Dispatcher. You know, I actually just got back to the house from a kickboxing class that I've joined. I joined a kickboxing studio, and I went out. I got the free class. Really enjoy it. Really do like kickboxing. I did it in the past when I lived in Sacramento. So after, the free class, they hit you with the options, right? Like, all right, I gave you that freebie. Now we want you to join. You want us to give you some money. So I was looking at these three options, and I ended up choosing 8 classes a month with a 3-month commitment. So, and from there you can upgrade and whatnot. But when making that decision, it really got me thinking. And, when we're out here trying to improve ourselves, we're trying to make better decisions, make better options. Small and consistent is the goal. Roger Sutherland, who came on an episode with me earlier, emphasized this for movement. Raina, another episode, emphasized this for nutrition, that doing the good small thing consistently goes a long way. And I think sometimes that's hard for us, especially dispatchers, to do, to understand, is that like we can slow down and we can do the one thing good consistently in order to better ourselves long term in the end. And even for me, I used to play college basketball, and that inner athlete in me wants to be like, I want the unlimited classes. I'm going to be here every day. But 32-year-old Ashley is realizing, I'm just trying to throw a kick a couple times a week consistently, and that's okay. And we'll see where it ends up there. With those words of wisdom, I'm going to bring on our guest today, Francisco. He's out of Memphis Police Department's Emergencies Communications Bureau. We're going to talk a little bit about dispatch.
Hey.
Hi, Francisco. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Awesome. How was your day so far?
I just woke up, got to do a couple errands that have been pending. I really don't get to due to my hours, I don't get to be up in the morning. I'm usually going to bed at 3:45 a.m. and I won't open my eyes until 3 p.m. late afternoon. So I got to do a couple morning errands that were waiting for the past few months.
Isn't it so weird to like be out in the world like early when all like the normal folk are out there like doing all the
100%.
things?
100%. I live in I live in Bartlett, which is kind of a suburb of Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
And here nothing's 24 hours. Everything closes at 8, that kind of thing. No 24-hour supermarket. There's nothing like that. So I usually end up getting a lot of meals out of Walgreens because that's the only thing that'll be open.
Yeah, it's wild, especially with shift work. I mean, when I worked graveyard, I'm currently on day shift right now, but historically for the past 5 years, I've been working graveyard. And I know in SAC, I get off work sometimes like my Friday or whatever, 6 a.m. I just go to the grocery store, because it's like I don't have any food because I haven't been able to get anything during my work week. Like it's challenging for sure.
Yeah. Keeping up with doctor's appointments or things that, just general things. You want to pick up your dry cleaning. That's what I had to do today, pick up dry cleaning. I had a package I needed to send, and all that stuff has to be done in the morning.
Yeah, especially doctors, because they'll just schedule a random appointment. I'm like, that ain't gonna work for me. That day, that's not
right. If it's not after 11:45 or before 3, it's not gonna work.
So, how did you get into public safety?
So, by a fluke, I was working in a communication center, for lack of a better term, for Pizza Hut, basically. Okay. And it was a call center. And they just took calls from all the stores, routed orders, et cetera, so on and so forth. And it just so happened that one of the supervisors there her aunt worked as a 911 dispatcher, and when the position came open, she just told me to apply, and it was triple my pay at the time, and I took it because in my head, 911 was medical dispatching, and I always thought that it was all one package deal, that it wasn't police and medical like it is in some places, and here it is. It's separate.
Mhm.
So I will always wanted to be in the medical field. My goal was to be a doctor one day.
Hmm.
So I said, oh, well, I'm doing this. It's really not paying that much. I think this is medical. So I went for it only to find out it has nothing to do with medical. It's all police. But I said to myself a long time ago that as long as I'm helping somebody, that I'll be happy doing whatever it is that I'm doing. And it's stuck, and it turns out I'm really good at it.
Oh, that's awesome. So you guys, so in your center, you're doing just police at
Yes.
the moment.
So we do only police, and we'll transfer out for medical.
Okay, so see, that's the kind of setup that I've always worked in. My
Mhm.
my larger agency in SAC, and my new agency were police and transfer out to medical. See, I'm the exact opposite of you. I have always tried to avoid any
The
center
medical?
that does medical. I'm like, more power to the dispatchers out there who can give CPR over the line and help deliver babies and, like talk to people about things that's shoved in places that they should never try to shove them. Because that I have no desire to dive into that world of dispatching. It just seems like it would be such a challenge,
Yeah. Yeah. After the fact, now having to listen to some of those calls, I can't imagine. I don't want to stay on the line that long, having to nitpick the instructions.
Oh,
I'm
my
much more suited to the police
Yeah,
side of
and
things.
yeah, and when you like transfer those calls over and you're like listening to make sure you don't have to join, you're like,
Right.
all right, okay, we're good. And then they just start throwing you, we're like, all right, that's enough. Here we go. Like
Exactly.
no
Exactly.
longer need to be on this phone. Everything's fine. So what responsibilities do you have in your center? Like what's kind of your day-to-day for your
So,
role and your position?
so we're divided 4 and 4 hours call taking, 4 hours dispatching.
Mhm.
So any day that you work, you'll just have to pick a radio, see which one you're going to work, whether you're on the first half or the second half. Then after that, it's we have a couple specialized positions. Like there's an administrative phone line. There's somebody that calls out the tow trucks. There's the NCIC operator, and then there's a relief position that just gives out breaks. And then I am a trainer, so usually I'll have somebody that's sitting with me, and then I'm also the training communications training senior. So I supervise the trainers, make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing too.
Awesome. So do you guys do like an academy, like a academy as well, or do you guys have your entries and laterals hit the floor and go?
Well, no, we have an academy. We have an academy. It's changed because they have been playing with how long they need to be in there, how short they need to be in there. So I couldn't even tell you definitively how long it's going to be. But there is about 3 or so week or more period where they will be on the classroom doing APCO and all those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll hit the floor, and then they do 120 days. It's supposed to be 120 days. It could be more of training. It's supposed to be about 40 before they get released as a call taker, and then 120 before they get released as a dispatcher. And that'll be with the CTO.
Yeah. That's pretty similar to kind of the way that I went through training. We did an academy, classroom, traditional learning environment. Got pushed onto the floor for 2 weeks, kind of like hot week. And then they brought us back into the classroom for our final week, sharpened us up, and then threw us out into call taking training, one-on-one with a trainer. And I find, and the more people I talk to, and the more people, and of course, not every center has the capacity to do their own academy and keep people off the floor and whatnot. Right. But I do find that a lot of people really appreciate that the traditional classroom ease into all the things that we have to learn in this job.
Yeah. A lot of I think that sometimes the sitting with somebody on the floor can only take you so far, because a lot of people I have found have kind of this idea that they should get it the first time. And if you didn't explain every single thing that they're going to come across in full detail, they get frustrated. And you can't, explain every single thing before you
Yeah.
get exposed to it in the classroom. But they definitely appreciate being told things before they occur. And then they're sitting there flabbergasted with anywhere, no way to turn.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, and just the level of like, because I just, went through retraining really because I lateraled to another agency.
Mhm.
And just the nature of training, your trainer's job is to nitpick, right? It's to, during your training, is just to, in a sense, kind of dog you out a little bit
Literally.
about all the little things that you kind of get to come into your own outside of policy, of course. But when you're solo, there that extra layer of like everything I'm doing is going wrong. I'm not doing everything perfectly goes away, but during training, that's their job, is to kind of hammer every little thing into you. And that could be tough as someone going through training. It is tough as someone who's going through training because you're constantly being critiqued.
Yeah. I find a lot of times that, as a CTO, I sometimes try to limit, because I can tell when the person's reaching that point of way too much. Nothing, we're not making any headway here. So I kind of try to lay back a little bit and, say, hey, you did this right, so that it's not all negative. But yeah, it is 100%. Some days I do find myself 99% of the time, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm so happy to be out of training. Because man, I mean, imposter syndrome is real. Because like when you're going through your training, especially when you've been doing the job and you're like, I'm gonna get dispatched, and then you're like a couple weeks and you're like, maybe I'm not good. Maybe for the past 4 years I was trash.
Yeah.
It just no one told me. Like
yeah.
So that's how long have you been doing it, right?
I have been dispatching for 9 years.
9 years. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. That's so awesome. And what would you say it was like in the beginning for you? Like jumping in, getting your feet wet, how did that transpire?
So it was good in some ways, and it was difficult in other ways. So the pace of it was kind of similar. I was coming from a call center background. So that part of it, taking calls, customer service, that part of it wasn't really anything for me to learn new. The part that was difficult for me was understanding, because I was ignorant, at the time, of the way police worked, what happens to a police report when it's filed, where does it go to, what kind of questions they need to ask to discern if it's this or that or yada, yada, etc. I didn't know any of that. So learning all of that, learning the different bureaus in our agency, who handles what, where would be the best way to refer this kind of person. All that was difficult for me to learn because it wasn't really necessarily written down. It was kind of like you would take a call and I would have to refer myself to an officer and say, hey, look, they have this going on. Where do I go to next? And learning that was difficult for me. And then the other thing that made me angry was the unwritten rules. There was 1,000,000,001 unwritten rules that about everything, and it was
good old gray area of dispatch.
Yeah. And I have photographic memory, so I memorized the policy completely, verbatim. So that was not a problem. I read it twice, and I was like, I don't think it says that. It says such and such. But the issue is that when it's not written down, there's nothing to memorize. So it was like this constant conflict. I remember once was about the seniority, like the officers' unit numbers dictate a certain seniority. And so they kept telling me, well, you have to raise them in this fashion because of their seniority. And I remember I was just saying, where's that written down? Because it doesn't say that anywhere.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much it. Those two biggest things for me.
It's true because there are a lot of unwritten rules in dispatch, a lot of gray area, and I know for me, like I'm a policy gal too. So like at the end of the day, there's style, there's policy, And if there is going to be any question of whatever I'm doing, I always fall back to policy. Like, what's the policy? Like, hey, yeah, it's cool. You would much rather me have done it that way, but what's the policy state? Did I break the policy?
Exactly.
You know, like that's totally me too. Just the CYA aspect. And at the end of the day, like I don't want to be nitpicked based on style, right? Like,
Right.
so I think it's definitely hard, especially for folks who are coming in with training, to navigate that gray area that just is so prevalent in the dispatch world.
Yes. I try to, encourage people to take notes as best as possible. But I have, through the years, written down a lot of these rules that are unusual or special case scenarios, and I've developed quizzes on them so that the quizzes, when the trainee takes the quizzes, it'll develop conversations between the CTO and the trainee to address a lot of these instances, like phone numbers for sometimes people call in tips and they want to get paid for those tips. And that involves a special phone line. We can't even take their information. We have to transfer them to that phone line so that they get, they take down the appropriate information, et cetera, so on and so forth. So just these really uncommon situations that they might not experience or might have questions on, I've kind of throughout the years developed different quizzes to try to address those.
I think that's I think that's a great idea for, the trainers and the CTOs that listen in, to not be afraid to make those really center specific information packs for your trainees, because the more quickly they become entwined in the way this center operates, the easier the training process is going to be. One question that a lot of people ask me when they get through the process and they're about to start training is they're like, what can I do to prepare, prior to my day one, so I can be successful in this training program? And one thing I always tell them, especially when they're already in the door, is to email their contact, whoever that is, and ask for whatever, the type code or the codes that you guys enter the calls in as. Because the sooner you get an understanding, you're not going to understand it fully until you're in it, but the sooner you can understand what those codes are and what they represent, the quicker you're going to drop a call, right? Because at the end of the day, all we really need is an address and a call type and a very brief, and we can add everything later, right? Because the call type usually summarizes a gist of what's happening for anyone who's dispatching it or the responding folks. So I always say that is like, get those early as you can and start getting those into your memory, because it just makes the whole process much easier, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree. If in our policy, there's 1,001 pages, but the most important pages are the two that talk about the different call types and what their definitions are, and then the number of officers that you're going to send according to each call type. Exactly. Those 2 pages, if you don't learn anything else, that is what you need to focus on. And just memorizing that to where you can regurgitate it at end will save you billions of hours, questions, etc. You'll be able to differentiate between the call types. You'll know what's inappropriate just by that alone.
Yeah, seriously. Do you remember any of your first calls for service when getting into this line of work?
So I only remember the major ones. I remember that there was this lady that called in. She called in frantic. Let me rephrase that. I got it backwards. Hang on. Cut that out. So there was this gentleman that called in frantic because his child's mother had appeared at his door, banging down the door saying, "Where's her baby?" But this was a baby that he had no idea of. It was a girl. And he had a boy by this female, but he had no girl. As far as he knew, he hadn't had contact with her in many, many months. So she comes banging down the door asking, "Where's her baby girl?" And he says, "I have no idea what you're talking about. We don't even have a baby girl." She leaves and takes off in her car. So he gives me her name and address and her number, because the way she was describing the story, it was like she was missing. So I call her and I ask her, what's going on? And she's frantic all over the place, says my baby's missing. She gives me her name, and I try to get her date of birth and everything so we can start putting her in NCIC while we get to the scene. So she starts telling me that she doesn't think I'm with the police. She doesn't think I'm with the police, which didn't make any sense at the time because I was just, I'm the police. What more do you want? You want my badge number?
Right, here's my badge number.
I tell her, look, if you don't believe I'm with the police, just call us. You call us then, if that's a problem. But she never calls. So I send the police to the area where we believe she lives, and eventually she does show up, and they take a report. Well, it turned into a whole manhunt looking for the baby. Apparently, they'd been kidnapped, and the baby was eventually found by two bikers. I think a week or so later, in a ditch, deceased, and the mom was taken into custody. She was surveyed for many days and taken into custody. And I got subpoenaed for that. And I was supposed to appear in court. And the last I heard of it, the day I was supposed to appear in court, a ransom note appeared out of nowhere. And that was the end of the case.
Wow. That is wild.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. Like we talk about like these calls and just how quickly things can escalate, right? Like this person didn't even know there was a baby girl, and then all of a sudden, the baby's missing, and then, it just continues to escalate, and you're kind of maybe even questioning mom's state a little bit, like what,
right.
It's kind of, like, is there really a baby girl? And then, like all these things can just escalate on these calls for service, and any call can make a hard right turn.
Right. Exactly.
At any moment, and that's one of the reasons, like, even on non-emergency calls, you have to like always operate a certain way because you just never know when a call is going to escalate,
Right.
And I mean, I've taken 911 calls that are like non-emergencies, like, why are you calling on this line? And then I've taken non-emergency calls and they're like, yeah, I was just stabbed. And you're like, why are you calling on this line?
You're on the wrong line or been shot.
How do you even get this 7-digit number while you're bleeding? Like, thank you for having this in your phone. Like, that's awesome. But yeah, this is a 911 moment. Please call 911 for that. So after that, I mean, that's a pretty intense call. Did you guys have any sort of like debriefing for dispatch or anything in that realm of things?
We do have debriefing. In that instance, no, there wasn't any. There is more now. As if if you request it, you'll get it. I didn't request it at the time, and I was fine, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, as fine as we can be, right? I mean, that's kind of, like my dad, he'll like, his friends will be like, oh, 911 dispatcher, like, she good? Like, my dad always says like, oh, she seems fine, there's no, and I think that there is I think we all have a certain level of like effect, right? For the things we hear and the things, and I think it does affect our daily lives and how we move and how we operate. But of course, recognizing when it's getting a little too heavy, that's kind of the need. That's what we need to be able to do in this line of work, is recognize when it's like too intense or too heavy, and we need that extra support, which is becoming more and more available, it seems, for departments.
Yeah, it's definitely available. We've had several instances, and they've been pretty good, and they just go in and get everybody and take them. So it's been initiated through management a lot of the time.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I love hearing that. So what advice would you give someone considering a career in dispatch?
Okay. So what advice? I have advice for different stages.
Okay. I want all of them.
Okay. So for the person starting out dispatching for the first time, my advice is stay humble.
Mm.
Focus on learning the rules that are written down and that are not written down, and be a moldable person. I've seen so many people walk through the door. They come in there thinking that they're going to be absolute perfection, and then it doesn't end up being that way, and they just develop this antagonistic attitude towards the person that's training them. It inhibits them from progressing forward. So be humble is my first advice.
Yes.
Once I become a dispatcher, I'd say that it's really easy to get sucked into some of the depression that may be going on the floor, disgruntled workers, their comments, etc. But the best thing that anybody can do is get involved in the process, ask why things are the way they are, and try to be a part of the solution. And then after that, if you want to progress in your career, I'd say get involved with NINA, APCO, and any other organization or free class that is offering us support or offering us certificates or whatever the case may be, so that you can pack your file with everything in case you do want to move up, become a supervisor or CTO, whatever you want to do.
I think those are awesome. That's awesome advice. And I do think it is super easy once you are past the training stage, you're a full-fledged dispatcher, to get sucked into the toxicity that can exist in our centers. It's no secret that there is a little bit of drama attached with dispatch sometimes. Yes. But it is very important, like you said, to be a part of the solution rather adding to the continued problem. And I do think, supervisors, admin managers, they have a tough gig, right? It's like they have to mandate folks in. You gotta force people in for mandated overtime. When your supervisor's calling you on your day off, it's not good news. They're not calling to tell you about a raise they're giving you. They're calling to tell you you're coming in, there's some type of staffing issue or even major emergency that we need to pull everybody in for. So managing all those people, personalities, emotions, policies, that's a tough gig. And I think if you're not in a supervisory role at this time, we need to leave a little space for that and give some acknowledgement to the tough job that, even when I think about Dispatch Appreciation Week, right? My supervisor is a dispatcher as well, and they're the one who is tasked with appreciating us, which is essentially appreciating themselves, but they're doing all the work and no one's doing that thing for them because they're doing it for us. You know what I mean? So just those little things, we can give some space and some gratitude.
Right. And a lot of the times the supervisors really aren't the persons making the decisions, and maybe the managers, and maybe from beyond some of the chiefs. It just depends. So it's not always dump on the supervisor. It's maybe not even their fault.
Exactly. And I would hope that most supervisors are wanting, the folks who are on the floor answering the calls to participate in creating the cultures in their centers, right? I think if we are bringing good ideas, good intentioned ideas, reasonable ideas, I would love a massage chair at my desk, but the reality is I'm probably not going to get one. So if we're bringing reasonable things to our centers that are going to create positive environments, I don't see any supervisor in a comm center who would be upset about that contribution.
Right, exactly. And we do have massage chairs, just FYI.
You have massage chairs?
Yes, but they're not on the floor. They're in a room.
See, I'm gonna send an email. Look, I just talked to Memphis. They got massage chairs. So
Two of them.
We need to up our game. Oh, that's amazing. How do you feel this job has changed you?
Another tough question. I took notes for the tough questions.
Yes.
So I feel like it has changed me as far as my disposition to certain things. Sometimes I feel like it's for the better, and sometimes I feel like it maybe not in certain situations. Like I feel jaded in certain instances. I can see kind of the way things are supposed to go, or the way things go in any particular instance. Like in dealing with different branches of everything, right? Be that a hospital or another agency or whatever the case may be. I've learned kind of the ways that things are supposed to go and where breakdowns can occur. So I feel like I've lost innocence in a way. And I'm sometimes suspicious of did this person do their job right? If I'm like at the hospital, I'm like, well, I know that she said she was going to do this, but did she do it? Maybe I should follow up, because I know how things go. People forget to do what they're supposed to do. So in those instances, I've become jaded, but that's also been a benefit, because when I do need to get something done, I know I can't just say or rely on, I talked to so-and-so and they said they were going to do it. It's going to take more than that. So that's about it.
Well, I totally agree. I think that dispatching like gives us some little bit of sprinkle of some superpowers. Like we just have this extra follow through, I think, as dispatchers that that folks who don't dispatch may not have. And there is a certain level of awareness, right, that comes with knowing like the bad of the world as well as the good. I mean, there is a lot of good that we hear come through our phones as well. But there is a sense of awareness that just can kind of make you the Debbie Downer in the room sometimes, you know.
100%. 100%. That's
You know,
exactly how I feel sometimes.
yeah, like
I'm just like,
18-year-old.
wait, what about? I don't know. Wait a second, guys.
Right, like, you know, like we're really putting ourselves in a situation here, and they're
Yeah,
like,
this
"Fine,
could
it'll be
happen.
fine."
This could happen. This could
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, exactly. It's so funny because I actually went out with my partner, some of my partner's work friends, last night, and we were in a part of town that I was like, maybe it's midnight. We should probably go home. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
we probably shouldn't be standing on the street corner right now. This is scenario.
Exactly.
We should probably, you know. And then my partner's like, "It's fine." And I'm like, "But is it?" Because
Last
you know,
week, it went
yeah,
fine last week.
yeah, like yeah, exactly. Like you know, it's never the people who are supposed to be harmed that are harmed. It's the folks like us standing on this corner right now,
Exactly.
just parlaying like that. It's those people. So it's definitely good and bad in that sense. I think it does create a little bit of anxiety in my personal life, a little bit about the what ifs that maybe people don't focus on as much as I think first responders do.
Exactly. And in the city that you work in, when I go on vacation, I'm more,
Mhm.
whatever. You know,
Yeah,
I'll go down this alley.
right?
Why not?
Crime. What's that? There's no crime here.
So
Oh my god, that's so funny. So funny. Well, is there anything that you would leave folks with as we're exiting that you'd want them to add to their tool belt, you know, think about before getting in this line of work, or any parting wisdom as we come to a close here?
I'd say that I think it's a really good career to get into. It's really stable. It's been really stable for me. There's pensions. They just brought up back our pension.
That's awesome.
So it's given me a lot of opportunities to do what I want to do, and because of the way that our particular center is set up, you get vacations and you can do changes to your schedule. So it's given me a lot of flexibility to go anywhere that I wanted to go, or go on vacation anywhere I want to go. A lot of time off. And I'd say just if you want to help people, that it's something you should get into. Don't just necessarily do it for the money, because it's not going to be enough at a certain point. It's not going to be enough. But you have to have the heart for it. But if you do have the heart for it, it's definitely rewarding. It's good to know that sometimes throughout my career, I can point out certain instances where I was able to save that person's life because I made this decision and I made my units do X, Y, and Z, which resulted in saving this person's life. So it's rewarding.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Francisco, for jumping on with me. I really appreciate it. I'm going to kick you out and then I'll come back to you, okay?
Okay, cool.
All right, everybody. That was another episode of Let's Talk Dispatch. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm super excited about how this is going, this becoming a podcast, and us really just getting out there, me getting to talk to more folks and get this information out to people in different ways. What I am looking for, though, is a little bit of participation from you folks. If you have a dispatch story, good, bad, lesson learned, funny, anything and everything in between, I'd love to hear about it. You can send me the story at theraspydispatcher@gmail.com. I'd love to end up reading these on like a mini-so type of episode of Let's Talk Dispatch. But for now, don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, stay raspy, everybody. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Let's Talk Dispatch. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube at The Raspy Dispatcher, follow us on Instagram, and check out Let's Talk Dispatch anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'll see you next time, and stay raspy.